This was a case from Orange County last year. We went to trial last fall. This is an interesting case also, because in this particular situation, the plaintiff accused the defendant, and I was retained by the defendant, said, "You signed this agreement. You transferred this property to me. You have to get out." Well, I had to do an examination on the document. Now, when we have photocopies, typical rule of thumb is there's something called a cut and paste. Cut and paste, it comes from the old days where someone would literally cut a piece out of a paper, paste it on, put it on a copy machine, make a copy, and say it's an original. Now they do the cut and paste with Photoshop or other techniques, but they also sometimes use paper. In order to determine is it really a cut and paste, a lot of times you have to have the model signature so you can say this is a replica of this. I didn't have that. So I had to do a different type of analysis on here. Any ideas how to go about that? Well, here's something. I redacted out all the identifying information here. And we can see down here that there's a signature, there's a signature. Using Photoshop, I rotated the image so that it was horizontal and was able to draw a horizontal line under one of these lines because, as we all know, when a printer prints, it prints horizontally.
So they're on different levels?
They're not on different levels.
Yeah, they're not on the same level. They're skewed.
Yeah.
They're skewed vertically.
Right. And you can go along and say, well, I want to raise the line a little bit and insert a code, and the rest it'll stay, or maybe it'll come back down because you take out the code. But typically, they go straight across. They don't go diagonally on the page. So what happened here, after I did the test on here and was able to show that the lines in the document are horizontal, I drew a horizontal line down here on the signature lines. Notice anything strange? Yeah, they don't line up. You notice this one is above the horizontal line. This one goes below the horizontal line a little bit. Do printers do that? Not normally. Now that was one piece of evidence. And when we look at altered documents, you can't just go on one piece of evidence and say, this is for sure. So let's continue the examination on here. Let's look more deeply. On the signature lines here, notice that they're not even horizontal. They're not straight. They dip down. What that says is that whoever did this probably used the old cut and paste method, actually cut out signatures, put them on here, thought they were nice and straight, made a photocopy, and here we go. Because if you do it in Photoshop, depending upon the orientation, you might misalign it, but a lot of times you'll be able to get it nicely lined. So I'm suspecting that maybe they used a real cut and paste on here. Then if we look at the date line down here, it's nice and horizontal. So that tells us there's something wrong with the signature lines. We did a little more research on this. I wanted to see how did the name Candace appear on the signature line. This is below the signature line that says Candace. And then how does her name appear on each bullet in the text? Is there a difference there? Can you see a difference? I mean, what's that difference?
Not as clear, not as many pixels.
Not as many pixels. One was a lot more blurry. The one on top. The one in question. The ones below are fairly similar. And they have the similar dot patterns around them. This is a 40 times magnification of a W in Candace's last name. And by the way, that's not her real last name. I don't want to give away people's identities. But this is the W in her last name magnified 40 times. And see all those dots in there? Over here, on Terry's name, there aren't as many dots. You notice there's a big difference over here. And what that says is that those dots are probably, I can't say for sure because I don't have the original, were probably caused because the original source of the cut and paste was a colored piece of paper. And when the colored piece of paper was copied, it pixelated. And because of whatever the color was probably maybe light gray or something, the colors were different on these pages. And that's why we have different dot patterns. So I presented this to the court, and the court agreed with me. That document saying that the defendant had made an agreement with the plaintiff was not a legitimate document. The plaintiff won the case. Why? Because the plaintiff's attorney was able to convince the court that he was drugged out at the time this was done, and he did not have capacity to contract.